Down here in Bray Cove, all this area back in here, you got the back lake mouths that go back into Little Brundit, Big Brundit that connect back there. You got this other small little back lake there. You know, with the amount of water that we've still continue to have in here, these areas have still been, they've been really good. They still lit up really nice. Got bait working in there. Water's gotten a little cooler. And so we're working these edges out here a little bit more over a little bit deeper water early on. And as the day begins to kind of warm up just a tad bit, then we'll get back in just a tad bit more shallow water. A lot of different things that we've been throwing. Down south originals, down south burner shads, again the knock and tail lures, top water baits, suspended baits in your soft dines, soft dine XLs, double Ds. All these baits have been in play. And as far as your color selection goes, you just need to make sure that you have darks and lights, just depending on what your water clarity is, or how dirty or how clean that water is that you're fishing. Some of these areas, these water have been really clear, or maybe just a slight stain to it. So we've been using more translucent color baits, like the white ice, supernatural, firecracker, the mud minnow in the burner shad, Texas roach in some a little bit more stained water, magic grass, just an assortment of different flavors of bait. So make sure you have all that different kind of things. Redfish have been fairly good back in this area. There's been some scattered trout that's back in here. Even pulled out a flounder or two out of these areas as well, just kind of working the edges and working close to the bottom for those. Flounder season is back open now, so just FYI if you were not aware of that. So you can start harvesting those again if you so choose. One thing that's fixing to take place up and down our Texas coast is we've got this big front that's going to be pushing into us later this week. So water temps, air temps, everything's going to get much colder toward the end of the week. So that kind of stuff that you need to prepare for. So you'll have a prefrontal condition that's going to be happening probably around Wednesday, possibly Thursday. Just depends on how fast this front moves down here, but it's going to have some Arctic air with it. Now, how cold it actually gets, that is yet to be determined as we progress through the week. That hopefully that will be a little bit more clear. So make sure that you have layered up really well. If you're going to fish in and around this type of weather conditions, make sure that you kind of got your plan in place, as far as, because the winds on this thing are going to be pretty strong as well. We're looking at 25 to 40 mile an hour winds. It's going to be pushing in when this thing arrives, and it's like I say, it's going to have some Arctic air to it, so it's going to be pretty chilly. So that's drastically going to change what our fishing conditions are and what the fish are going to want to do. This will be where your suspended baits, small baits, you're going to want to make sure that if you're going to throw plastics of some sort, you want to make sure that you got those smaller jig heads on. Again, we've been throwing 16th ounce jig heads for majority of the year, but that's really what you want to be throwing in this water conditions when it gets much colder like that, so that bait just kind of glides down through that water column and doesn't just fall down into it. They're not going to be super active. Your suspended baits, Corkies, Corky Devil, Fat Boys, floaters, XLs, your soft dines, double Ds. Those are all great choices for when that water temp gets really cold like that, because they're really a slow moving bait. They really suspend in the water there. Those are kind of things that you're going to really want to, also the Mirror Lure MR 180 or 82 and 81s will be good. Just depends on what flavor and what color that you want out of those. Make sure you have an assortment. So there may be a lot of different ones that can do stuff for you. Mud areas, you're going to want to work deeper edges and guts early in the morning if you're out in that time frame. You're going to want to work that deeper water over mud and shale, a little bit of shale, clump shale, grass. And then hopefully if you get enough sunshine later in the day, you will want to be into another flat that's probably got more mud on it. So those fish will want to move up into those areas as they transfer out of that deeper water into that shallower water. Got to locate some bait, not a lot during those time frames like that. When you got just a little bit of bait working in the area, more than likely there's going to be a predator somewhere close by to that. So your majors and minors are still spot on. They've been very productive for us during these time frames leading up here. as we're starting to move toward that new moon phase. So make sure that you're including that into your fishing day if it works out as far as your time frame throughout the day. Again, make sure you're paying attention to the weather. Locate your bait in these areas, and you'll find some good, nice, productive fish. Down here, Spalding area, these are great locations. Again, we got this big front that's going to be pushing into us later in the week. So what typically that's going to do is we get that big old heavy air and strong winds that come through these areas, it starts pushing this water across the bays, it starts pushing it out of there, and we start getting these super low tides and negative tides, or really, really close to water being pushed and gone a lot. So these types of areas, it's got guts, back lake mouths, edges on here. You got a little bit of everything here. Even up here in the fingers of Carlos, in this area right here, you've got guts that are on that. Pay attention to this up here, where if you're going to fish the fingers, though, with that big old strong north wind like that, sometimes this area right here gets blown out pretty bad, so it makes it difficult to fish. But you've got floaters, you've got Fat Boy, sinker, you've got the Double D. All those have got some rattle into it. The Paul Brown Original's got rattle in it, so you can fish that type of water as long as you've got bait available to you. If you've got a food source that's working in some of these areas, then you're going to be okay. But back down in Spalding, back in here, and all these guts that are back here, these back lake mouths that dump out, and you can even get back to these lakes back in here and back in here. Some of these here, all this is wadeable back there. You can get into that stuff. You just have to make sure that you pay attention to what your tide is doing, how much water is in those areas. Early mornings, these areas back in here won't be as good because, shallow water heats up and cools off faster. So with colder air that we're going to have throughout the week, these shallow water estuaries back here in the back like that, they're going to be pretty chilly. So those fish are not going to want to just kind of hang out in that. They want to find them a nice, comfortable spot, get into your deeper guts that fish like the mouths of it over the mud, out on these big flats that's out here in front of it, especially with the lower tides. You've got clump shell that's all scattered out in some of these areas. Those would be the kind of points and emphasis places that you'll want to target. These are not the only areas that there's stuff like this. If you know other areas that are similar to it, you're going to want to fish that, or at least look in that area. So you've got different areas up and down, from Sherman's area through here on this big back lake is another one that you can look at. You've got nice deeper water in sections of it. You get up to Jaybird, all the way to that point there. You've got mouths there. So these are the kind of points and things that you want to look for. Again, make sure that you're looking for bait to work in there. May not have very much show itself. When we had that warmer trend a few days or a week or so ago, we had some really warm temperatures, a lot of the bait had showed back up as far as just coming out of deeper water and being up on shorelines and working and being super active. So those were things that we were looking for. Now, when this water temps are getting cooler, it gets less scarce, and so you won't have a lot that's in there. So those are things that you're going to want to pay attention to. And once you do find that, make sure you're throwing at it. Like I say, there could be a predator fish really close by to that. It gives you an opportunity to catch that fish. Again, we've been using the burner shads, original size in the down south. We've been using the knock and tail lures in the greenback and the smoke and watermelon red. Heavy metal, if you have nice clean water or stained water that's there. Honeydew also has been pretty well. It's been pretty productive for us. Again, the Soft Dine XL, Double Ds have been good. All your Paul Browns, all flavors of those have been good as far as whatever you like to throw in that. Just depends on you. Plastics, again, 16th ounce jig heads. You're not going to want anything more than that. You may, just depend on how cold that our water gets toward the end of the week, you may want to even bust out a 32nd. Those are kind of hard to find, but they are available at different places. You can locate some. More of your specialty tackle stores will probably have those for you. But just a thought. But again, the 16th ounce should do you just fine if you're going to throw a plastic. Majors and minors, make sure you pay attention to your weather this whole week because it's going to be pretty sketchy throughout the week. Off to the area down here across from Port Bay, Italian Bend area. This whole area back in here, you've got some back lakes that dump out into Italian Bend. Again, we've had, like I say, our water has been higher than what probably we usually will have this time of year. I think all that's going to change with this approaching front that we have coming in later in the week. But these areas right now are still good to fish. You still got plenty of water in here. You still got great opportunity up against the shoreline, fish the mouths. There's guts that come out of some of these areas. You just have to locate the deeper edge of it as you're wading in these areas. This whole area here in Italian Bend, there's decent amount of grass that's in these areas. The other thing too that you have to worry about is a lot of duck hunters. So there are duck blinds that are back in those areas. So be aware of that and just remember that as we move forward into this duck season and continue on into December. Work these edges, work this drop that's out here, and you can come all the way up to the point up here in Port Bay and work down to this area here. We're pretty much going to have northeast winds, east winds primarily the most of the week until the front arrives, and then it'll be straight north there for a few days. So this sets up to this area here to work really well for you. It's a big old muddy, sandy grass flat that's up in here. There's been a decent amount of bait that's worked in here, especially when it was warmer. Now, again, with the water temps being what they are, they're in some of these areas we're in the upper 50s, other areas we're in the 60s. So it just kind of depends where you're finding your mud and where you've got some good grass that's working here, and if you've got a nice protected area to keep that water just a little bit more warm than it would be if it was more exposed. But work this shoreline, work the edge out here. Look for what your structure is, whether you've got grass or if you've got big pockets that are in here. You got the a little bit deeper water that's out here on this edge that's out here for you. So you just have to cover that with your feet and let your legs and feet locate the bottom for you. If you're not really familiar with it, that's the best way to locate and see what kind of structure you got. Again, primary baits that we've been using in these particular areas have been primarily the down south and knock and tail lures back in here. Again, 16th ounce jig heads, magic grass original, chicken of the sea original, burner shad, and twisted tea, chicken of the sea, white ice, purple rain have been very productive for us. The knock and tail in the watermelon red, greenback, smoke flavor. The smoke is just a little bit smaller. It's a 3 1/4 inch bait, which is a really good bait, especially when you got a big old high pressure, big moon in place. So it was productive during the big moon that we just left from a few days ago. And again, we're in transition days here, so remember, you got all different kind of opportunities. So make sure you got a nice assortment of baits in your box, an assortment of sizes, colors. So whatever that is, when you're loading that box up to go wade some of these areas, make sure you give yourself plenty of opportunity in choices to choose from those fish during these transition days to the new moon. They can be kind of finicky sometimes. So having them and catching them on different things, you may catch them from a burner all the way up to the big size of the down south of the supermodel. So 5 inch down to 3 1/4 or anything in between. Again, the soft dines and the soft dine XL have been really good. Nice slow suspending bait as it sinks down in that double D has been another great bait as well. So gives you just a little bit different profile, gives you a little bit different action for those particular baits to get those bites. Again, pay attention to what your majors and minors are doing. And really, if you're not fishing the first part of the week, make sure that you pay attention to what your weather is doing, because it's going to be drastically different in 4 or 5 days.